Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. It's time for our weekly gathering. We gather at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time, you are welcomed in this space. I want to be sure to give you the conference call line as well, because sometimes people don't join in on Facebook or they don't join YouTube, but they may want to be anonymously here on the phone live. So let me make sure you have that number, okay? The live phone number, conference call line is 717-908-1636. All right, so if you ever want to join on our conference call line, it's 717-908-1636. And the code that you enter once you get connected is 977613 and then pound. Okay, so if you ever are somewhere and you want to join via phone, you can dial 717-908-1636. Access code is 977613 pound. All right, so thank you so much for being here on this evening. And I want to thank you for all of the birthday wishes. Many of you said happy birthday to me. You sent me little notes or whatever you did. Thank you so very much. I am so grateful that I was able to see September 2nd one more time. So I thank you for your generosity. And I want to say thank you because many of you know that I was in revival for the past 2 weeks. So thank you so much for being here on this evening, because I know that if we don't gather for a couple of weeks, we want to still be together and we want to get back in. So thank you for your support even while I was in revival. And really, thank you for your support, period. I really, really appreciate you. And I needed to say that. So thank you so much. Do I look older? Do I look 1 year older? Do I look 5 years older? 6 years, 7 years, 10 years? You know what? It's less about age and more about the fact that you take care of yourself. And that's what I want to talk about on this evening before we get back to our Luke Bible study. People get really fascinated by looks. I get it. People get fascinated by looks. I wonder how old they are. I wonder this and I wonder that. Well, you know what I wonder? I wonder if we realize that in the month of September, this is the time where we really focus on suicide prevention awareness. Because guess what? It's not all about how a person looks. It's about the things that people deal with sometimes. And unfortunately, it can lead folks to mental health conditions that make them want to complete suicide, to take their own lives. And so on this evening, I want to talk about the fact that September is Suicide Prevention Month. And we need to be aware that just because somebody looks a certain way does not necessarily mean that everything's okay. Just because if you search their social media, things look great, doesn't always mean that, okay? So each September, I can tell you that National Alliance on Mental Illness, they share a toolkit every year. And so what I'm going to do is after this, I'm going to put the information in the chat so that you can look over what I'm about to share with you, okay? So I'm not making anything up. I'm simply going to share with you just how we can raise awareness when thinking about Suicide Prevention Month being September, how we can spread hope, and how we can spark meaningful action around one of the most urgent mental health issues of our time. And so I'm reading from their website. I'll throw some things in there based on maybe some experiences or some things that people have asked me to share. But mainly, whatever I say this evening, you're going to find it on this website, okay? So I want to be sure that you have access to this website, okay? So I'm going to present the information, but again, it's not mine. These are facts that we need to know so that we can be aware that some folks that we know and some people that we don't know, but some people we know are really facing the mental health issue of wanting to leave here, suicide ideation. So this month, the theme or the idea that we can focus on, according to National Alliance on Mental Health, is start a conversation, be the difference. Let me say that again. Start the conversation, be the difference. What they mean by that is that one conversation, like asking someone how they're really doing, could really, and then being there to truly listen, could really save someone's life. So I know a lot of times we ask people, well, how are you? And then we'll say, I'm fine or whatever. But what they're saying is something more intentional. Like, how are you really doing? Because no one has to face what they're feeling alone. Even if you feel like you need to do that, some things, yes, you face alone, and yes, you face it with the Lord and things like that. But there are people around so that you can recognize, or a person, facing suicide ideation can recognize that help does exist. Help does exist, and healing is absolutely possible. So it could just take one person starting a conversation. We talk about so many things, and sometimes they're surface things. I heard someone once say, we like to talk about topics rather than issues. We like to talk about topics rather than issues. A topic. Let me give us an example of that. The topic is, wow, it really is a pretty day. And this day, it's supposed to be 75 degrees. And in this day, it's not supposed to rain. The topic of the conversation is the day. The issue is, I don't want to even face this day. The topic is, it's a beautiful day. So we all agree on that. And then individually, I don't want to face this day. My issue is, and then I complete the sentence. Now, I know that there'll be those who will say, well, those kind of people, you start a conversation, those are the kinds of people who always have it bad. They always have something negative to say. Well, I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about, as mentioned here, starting a conversation and being the difference to where it's a different type of conversation. It's not just someone who wants you to join with them in a pity party. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a life-saving conversation to where we're just not talking about a topic, but an issue. Do people feel comfortable sharing their issues with you, or a issue with you? Do you feel comfortable hearing about someone's issue when it comes to life? Or are you the person who talks about topics? I think we need to ask ourselves that, because people are hurting and they really do need help. Now, if you're not the person who can listen to issues, that's okay. So I'm not throwing those people under the bus. If you're a person who doesn't do well listening to issues or even discussing your issues, you're a topical person, then that's okay. That's why I'm talking about this, because you need resources, all right? There are options. So if you can't handle the issue, or you need to resource somebody out, there are crisis resources in this toolkit. That's why I want to share it with you after this. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, they have here, you can call or text 988 immediately. Right now, if you needed to leave this space and contact 988, immediately, then you would have some support from experienced mental health providers, and even if, okay, let me not say it that way, because someone may be offended by that. You will contact someone who's willing to listen to you. You ever felt like you weren't listened to? You ever felt like you couldn't talk to anyone in your family about your issues? You ever felt like you weren't heard? You ever felt undervalued or underappreciated or unappreciated? You ever felt like you just needed to get something out? Well, your next step may not be to go to a therapist. Maybe you don't have money for that or something like that. Just text or call 988. And some folks experience shame where they don't want anyone to know. That's why I'm giving you this resource, all right? And so you can even chat with a suicide or crisis professional at this lifeline, 988lifeline.org. So if you're not a phone text person, if you're not a phone call person, you can do it on your computer. So you're joining me now, either on your phone or on your laptop or something like that. So just know that you have options, okay? So let's say that now they're talking about the conversation be the difference. Start the conversation, be the difference. Well, let's consider the warning signs. So if we're saying, well, I understand I could have a conversation or I could ask someone, but what should I look for? What should I look for? And if you're just joining, I'm talking about the fact that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, all right? So we want to be preventing, that's being proactive, getting ahead of it. So maybe we need to pay attention to signs. Well, what they have here on the National Alliance on Mental Illness website for this year is warning signs include warning signs of suicide, increased alcohol and drug use. So this is not the time for Christians to go into their closet of judgment, or I should say get on their pedestal of judgment. All right? Oh, look at them doing drugs and drinking alcohol. Well, that may be a warning sign, everyone, of suicide. I'm not saying it necessarily is, but they're giving us this information so that we can get out of judgment per se, because I don't drink and I don't do drugs. Get out of judgment enough to have a conversation. I'm going to talk about how to start that conversation. But another thing, aggressive behavior. Well, they just need to learn how to talk to people. They don't know how to talk to people. Patience. Remember the fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22. One of those in there is patience, okay? And fruit of the Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit is how we are really actively Jesus Christ in the world. See that? Jesus patient in earthly ministry, you patient with someone who may show aggressive behavior. Now, I'm not talking about putting yourself in harm's way. I'm simply saying these are warning signs, possible warning signs of suicide. Withdrawal from friends, family, and community. Oh, I just don't know why they don't come to the fill in the blank. They just don't want to be social. What's wrong with them? And then if they complete suicide a week later, we start to feel bad. Oh, I didn't know they were going through that. Well, you didn't even consider that they might be going through that because you just wanted them to be at the meeting. You just wanted them to show up at the family gathering. You wanted them to do what you wanted them to do, and now they're not even here. So maybe people are withdrawing or not reaching out or not telling you good morning every morning because it's a sign of suicide. Maybe. Dramatic mood swings. Dramatic mood swings could be. And these are things that we need to be looking at and considering even for our children, especially children of African descent, because many times they are thrown into a category, even within the school system, of just being hoods or thugs or problematic children. But that same child may be thinking, I don't want to be here anymore. Maybe they're being bullied. There may be something going on at home, so when they come into our space, whether it be a church, a faith community, within our work, wherever, even in our family, don't be so quick to say that a mood swing is a red flag. You hear people talk about red flags all the time. What if we use red flag talk or we use warning sign of suicide talk as much as we do red flag talk? People post about red flags all the time. Some of you are still single because people keep telling you that person was a red flag when they were just a regular human being dealing with life. And they were dealing with you. So none of us are perfect. Everything is not a red flag. Sometimes it's an indicator. It's a sign. So instead of calling them flags, maybe we need to start calling them signs. Impulsive or reckless behavior. That could also be a sign for us, okay? So it's just really important that we have that 988 number and the website and all of that just at our disposal, because even if it's not you, it may be someone in your community. So there are also risk factors. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, I have had ideas of taking my life before, and maybe you say to yourself, you're a Christian, and you say to yourself, I'm a Christian, so how dare I? God has given me life and life more abundantly. So then you start making yourself feel really bad because you thought about suicide. Well, let me help us to say that your faith is not supposed to be something that condemns you. It's supposed to be something that can convict you, which are two different things. So there is therefore no condemnation, for those of us, who are in Jesus Christ. So that condemnation that you may have felt when you wanted to end your life, that is not of God, because the Bible tells us in Romans that God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world may be free. So then you can be convicted, but you're not supposed to be condemned. So let me tell you why sometimes there are people who think like that. And I'm not saying that you have, but if you have, let me tell you some of the risk factors that they have even here on the National Alliance of Mental Health website. Because it says here that research has found that 46% of people who died by suicide had a known mental health condition. Several other factors may put a person at risk of suicide, including, but not limited to, a family history of suicide. So this is why in many faith communities, thank God, people are now saying it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist. Because your family history may be such that someone in your family committed suicide or completed suicide is what a lot of professionals say it that way. Completed suicide. All right. Maybe substance abuse. Substance abuse is a risk factor. Drugs can create mental highs and lows that worsen suicidal thoughts. So when you think about drug use, when you even think about alcoholism, because that's the next one, intoxication, definitely when we think about the analysis from the CDC, it indicates around 1 in 5 people who die by suicide had alcohol in their system at the time of death. So if you have a predisposition to drinking alcohol and then you overdo it and there's some history in your family of that, it can increase that thought process of, I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. Access to firearms also can be a risk factor, could be a risk factor putting a person at risk of suicide. So I can tell you that in my home, I have guns. I have guns when I go, I have guns. So some of us, we practice our, which amendment is that? You know it. I'll say the wrong one, but there's an amendment, right? We have a right to bear arms. Is it number 2? Second Amendment? Anyway, I have guns, and so what they're saying is if you have access to firearms and that may be a risk factor because in the moment, if I were here and I was just like, oh, I'm just not, gonna do, I have access. But you know what? Let me say this. You may be thinking, I can't believe Dr. McCoy has guns. I hate guns and I would never have a gun. Do you have some type of medication in your house? That'll do it too. So you're not exempt. If they have medication in their house, they're not exempt. So it's not just about having firearms. It's also about having something that can end your life. This is why we have to keep medications and things like that away from children and firearms. But we don't talk a whole lot about medication. There are things that those babies could drink, and a lot of it has childproof locks. That's true. So it has childproof locks and things like that. But there is something in your home that could cause you risk factor for suicide. Again, not saying that that's what you're thinking or that's what I'm thinking, but we need to have the information. This is about awareness. At least be aware. So we can sit back all day and say, well, that's not me. That's not me. Well, what about somebody you love? Or what about somebody you work with? You care about people. You care about people. So then it's important that we have this information. Another risk factor would be a serious or chronic medical illness. Some people, you've heard of euthanasia. So there are some folks who assisted suicide. That's what that is, right? There are some folks with access. If you have access, it's a possibility. That's what the website is talking about. Gender is also a risk factor. Although more women than men attempt suicide, this says men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide. Don't you care about the men in your life? So I'm just talking about, if you're just joining, I'm just talking about how September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And since this can be a hard topic in some spaces, I'm sure to talk about it in this space, all right? And I say that also because I've had 2 people who I love dearly to complete suicide. They were both men. One was when I was in middle school. African American, African descent male. He took a gun, I'm talking about firearms, and he ended his life in the backyard of his grandmother. And I remember being in middle school, and I was on the bus, and we had to pass that house every day. And I don't recall anything happening at the school to support us as children. And we know that people are getting better. But like I said, even in 2025, there are people still not wanting to talk about this. You know, even some of the things I'm saying may be like, whoa, you saying that? I'm like, yeah, because I've already lost people. And to be a young person and deal with that. And even now as an adult, when I go back to that area and I drive by, I remember Alex. I'm also talking about this because about less than 5 years ago, my colleague, Mark, a white male in his 50s, he completed suicide. He had been a pastor before. At the time, he was a chaplain in the hospital. He was a chaplain at the hospital, and there you go. You know, when I went to his memorial service, I was just sitting there like, whoa. And I was thinking, we talked. And a lot of these things, you know, I'm like, did I know this then? Did anybody help me to understand? But when I talked to him, we always talked about God. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I was the person that he came to talk about God. And I'm not saying that that's bad. Sometimes I just wonder, was that our topic that never helped us to get to the issue? Yeah. So, yeah. So that's all I'll say about that. So, yeah. Another risk factor is a history of trauma or abuse. So if you've thought about, completing suicide, leaving here. Now I got to get my thoughts right because I'm thinking about Mark and Alex. If you've thought about that, what I was trying to say was these risk factors are really important for you to know so that you won't feel guilty about having those thoughts, okay? Because one of the risk factors, for example, that you wouldn't be able to control would be the trauma that happened in your life, maybe as a child, or the abuse that happened. So if you were thinking about taking your life, per se, don't feel so guilty because it may be connected to an experience, that really just shook your entire world. That's why we need that number, 988. And then it could be prolonged stress. Listen to that now. Prolonged stress is a risk factor for suicide. Prolonged stress. So we all get stressed out, but they're talking about prolonged stress. You should have left that job a long time ago. Prolonged stress. You should have changed the way you thought about that thing a long time ago. Prolonged stress. That relationship, whether it's friendship, romantic relationship, prolonged stress. And then lastly, a recent tragedy or loss. Yeah, so maybe you thought that way, or maybe someone has thought that way because it's linked to realities. Let me see what you all are saying. Miss Carolyn, we need this teaching. So many people don't want to talk about it. Plus, we miss a lot of the signs. Yes, that's right. And good evening to all of you saying good evening to me. Yes, and I see you, Miss Rochelle, about red flags. Yes. Yes. And hello, Reverend Ward from Georgia. Yes, good evening, you all. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Yes, so true, so true. So then, remember I said something about how you have the conversation? How you have the conversation? Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. I said, let's talk about it like you can really talk about it. But you can talk back, okay? Even though I can't hear you, I can see you, okay? Okay, so when thinking about support in a crisis and having that conversation, start the conversation, be the difference. Well, how do I do that? Many times in spaces like these, people tell you what you ought to be doing, but they don't talk about how to do it. So what I love about National Alliance on Mental Illness is that they give us a little bit of information on that. And again, I'm going to post all this, okay? Now, some things I'm inserting myself, but when you read this, you will know that I got it from there, and I'm sharing with you what they're sharing with us, okay? So this says support in crisis. When a suicide-related crisis occurs, friends and family are often caught off guard, Miss Carolyn, just like you're saying. We need it. We miss a lot of the signs. So look, are you reading the same thing? You must be reading. So when a suicide-related crisis occurs, friends and family are often caught off guard, unprepared, and unsure of what to do. The behaviors of a person experiencing a crisis can be unpredictable, changing dramatically and without warning. There are a few ways to approach a suicide-related crisis. So here we go. Talking about start the conversation, be the difference. Okay, here we go. This is how we do it according to what they're saying. Talk openly and honestly. Don't be afraid to ask questions like, do you have a plan for how you would kill yourself? I know, that sounds really... Do you have a plan for how you would kill yourself? Some people would say, well, man, I feel like I'm encouraging them if I say something like that. Well, you're really facing it head on if you say something like that. We ask people questions all the time. You know what? Now you're concerned about making somebody feel uncomfortable when you ask them questions. You got fat, didn't you? Didn't you get fat? You put on some weight, didn't you? That's a question. When are you going to get married? That's a question. Then they get married. Then you ask them, when are you all going to have children? That's a question. People have birthdays. How old are you now? How dare we say we feel uncomfortable asking people questions? Maybe you feel uncomfortable asking this particular question, but be as bold as you ask those other questions, you know, when considering that it may possibly save someone's life. It's not saving someone's life when you ask them, are they about to have babies, or, you know, why didn't they show up to the whatever, right? Right. So, yes, do you have a plan for how you would kill yourself? Let's just be real about this. This is the other one. Remove means such as guns, knives, or stockpiled pills. Yeah, that's being proactive. Calmly ask simple and direct questions like, can I help you call your psychotherapist or your psychiatrist? I'm sorry, it does not say psychotherapist. Totally different. But can I help you call your psychiatrist? Understanding that a psychiatrist can actually prescribe medication, where a psychologist is like your therapist, you know, that you talk to, who cannot actually prescribe medication. You can tell that I'm in my head with this suicide thing because, again, I've experienced this firsthand. And I can tell you this, let me even go further than talking about Alex and Mark. I have had suicidal ideation. So when I talk about this, sometimes I get flashbacks. So if I seem a little whatever, it's because this is really a topic dear to my heart because I get to the issue. So I understand it's a topic for some people, but it's been an issue for me in my own personal life. When I was in my 20s, I wanted to just be gone from here. Like I wouldn't even be sitting here right now because life just didn't matter. Yeah, it just didn't. I mean, so I know what that feels like to wake up and just say, and I'm just being honest, this is my story, okay? I can share my story, right? I remember I would wake up as a 20-something where everybody thinks that the world is at your disposal. You know, all the old people would say that. And I'm going to make sure as I grow older that I don't do that to younger people, because just because you're 20 does not mean life is so wonderful because you have your youth. You don't have much to worry about. They used to say all of those things and I was dying inside. I remember waking up and I would take a sigh like, you know how when you don't want to do something? Yeah, I would wake up and I would be like, here we go again. Like, why? Why did you wake me up? How other people say, you know, this is the day that the Lord has made. I mean, I don't care about that. I was really that way. I was like, I really don't care. God made this day and all of you can be in it, but I don't have to be in it. For what? So when I'm talking about this, I'm not just talking about it because I've lost people to it, but I'm talking about it because I I almost lost me to it. You know, the world almost lost me to it. So I see you, Brother Coleman. Most people that commit suicide, they reach out to one person. Some feel embarrassed to talk about it. Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you're saying that, because I don't feel embarrassed. Because when people look at me and they see what I'm doing now, and they see all the pictures, all the sermons, all the teachings, all the everything that I get to do, I'm only doing that because I overcame being in a very dark place. And I can tell you that rock bottom has a basement. I can tell you that between a rock and a hard place is much easier than being displaced. So a rock and a hard place, at least you're placed. So when I hear people saying these things, I'm like, yeah, you must not have ever dealt with suicide ideation, and I hope you never do. But some of these things that flippantly people say, whether it be in churches or on the job or whatever, you know, I pray for them that they never have to be in the basement beyond rock bottom. That they never have to be in a place where they have to cheerlead themselves and tell themselves not to jump off the ledge of life. I pray that they will continue to have a great, perfect life. I pray that they will never go to the places that some of us have been and that some folks are in right now. Because all this stuff that's on this National Alliance on Mental Health, I'm telling you from a person who attempted and failed. That's the one thing I'm glad I failed at, is completing suicide. Who attempted and failed. That all of this stuff, everybody needs to know, and it's true. And if somebody would have said some of this to me in my 20s, it may have made a difference. But I got through it. But I'm saying the 20-something-year-old me would have loved to have the me now. So when you see me talking about what I'm talking about and doing what I'm doing, it's because how people say I shouldn't even be here. Yeah, I shouldn't be here because of me. Not because of a car accident necessarily, which I could have had a car accident. Not because of somebody else driving me crazy. I can't put it on other people. Not because of anything but the fact that I shouldn't be here because I tried to be sure of that I wouldn't be here. So these things are important because there are people who look the part. And then when they're gone, you say, I can't believe that. And so now I'm sure to take care of my mental health because I won't go back to that place. Because I hear the Lord saying to me, you can't go back down there because I can get you out, but you would have to do something. And I just don't know about me. So I can't let myself get back there. So when I tell people no, or when I talk really strongly to people, or if I'm the person in the room that says things that everybody else is thinking but they don't want to say, or if in my preaching I'm bringing something up and you're like, whoa, that's because I'm still here. And if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. Because at the end of the day, I survived for you more than me because I didn't want to be here. But I realized that there were people who did want me here. So I thank God, again, that I failed. But my point is, I am here to serve people in a transparent and real way, in a genuine way. And we have to stop playing games because people's lives are hanging in the balance. I was one of those people. So again, I will be dedicated to being that person. People might get upset. They may not like it. That's all right. You don't have to listen to me. There are plenty other teachers. I'm a professor. There are plenty other teachers. The balloons. Happy birthday to me, belated birthday. But there are people who are professors. There's other teachers. You don't need me to teach you. There are other people who are preachers. You don't need to listen to me preach. There are other folks who are in pastoral roles. You can deal with them and follow them. There are other people on social media. There are so many people doing all of the things that I do. So when you hear people say, I'm not for everybody, it just comes from that place. Everybody doesn't want to go to a real, honest place. Let's just not talk about it. But I'm going to talk. So then supporting crisis also looks like expressing support and concern to say, I was just thinking about you. How have you been? And how are you really? And it doesn't have to be the kind of concern where you give them a look like, oh, they're losing all that weight. They must be on drugs, or all that assumption type thing. No. Just express support. And don't argue. Don't threaten or raise your voice. If you're nervous, try not to fidget or pace, and then be patient. And then I'm going to add this. This is not on here. At least I hadn't read it on here. Let me just say this in closing, because there's a lot more. But let me say this in closing. You do not have to share your stories if you don't want to. Okay? Let me be very clear with that. I am at a place in my life where I look around, and I feel that people need some real stories. And because it's mine and I own it, I'm not afraid to share it. You may not share yours, not because you're afraid. I'm not assuming you're afraid, because you're just not ready yet. Or you're embarrassed, or you simply just don't want people to know. And that's okay. That's why I've shared so many different ways by which to approach. Again, I didn't even see anything on here about share your story, because they may actually say that sharing your story really places you in the spotlight, when really it needs to be about the person having suicidal ideation. So it's not always a good idea to share your story, okay? So you don't have to be me. You don't have to be that person over there. You can be you. And if you don't remember anything else I said, remember 988, okay? And remember that I'm going to put this information in the chat, all right? I see you, Miss Diane. Yes, I thank God I overcame those thoughts as well. Okay, thank you for sharing. I tried and failed. Oh, Miss Diane. Okay, so we're both failures. Isn't that great? Yes, I tried and failed. Took a whole bunch of pills. I totally understand that feeling of not being good enough or smart enough. See that? So I tell you what, and Miss Carolyn saying good word. Thank you. You're welcome. So I'm going to close. Miss Rochelle, thank you for being willing to talk about the issues. There you go. I'm going to talk about issues and not just topics. Topics are okay, but we need issues. So I'm going to close by saying, I'm so glad, Miss Diane. God bless you. I'm so glad that I get to meet failures in life. Congratulations on failing. So again, this may not be for you. It may not be whatever, but September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I want you to take care of yourself, and I want you to take care of those around you, and don't be afraid, to get the kind of help that they need and or that you need. All right. God bless you. Have a good evening. Take care of yourself, okay? I know I said that a lot, but I mean it. Take care of yourself. I love you, and we'll gather again soon. And thank you again for the birthday wishes. Thank you for the love. Thank you for your kindness. There's so much that I can say about so many people out there. I just want to thank you so very much for your love and your support. I appreciate you, okay? I appreciate you. Have a good night.